Two men, same age, both 72. One walks into a room and owns it. Straight posture, steady gait, firm handshake. He moves like a man who trusts his body completely. The other one hesitates at every step, grips the railing, lowers himself into a chair like it might be the last time he gets back up. Same decade of life, completely different physical realities. And here's what I need you to understand right now. That difference has almost nothing to do with genetics. It has nothing to do with luck or money or having some exceptional history as an athlete. It has everything to do with one decision, made consistently over time. Iron. Most men over 70 are handed the same advice. Slow down, be careful, don't overdo it. And most of them, reasonably because they trust the people telling them this, comply. What the research actually shows is something most doctors never say directly to their patients. And by the time this is over, you will understand exactly why that gap exists, and more importantly, what to do about it. So let's begin where it actually starts, inside the body itself. Here is what most men over 70 are living with, and I say this not to judge, but because I've seen it consistently. They wake up stiff. They move with caution. They've quietly started organizing their entire world around what they can no longer do. Can't lift that anymore. Can't climb that. Can't recover from that the way I used to. And at some point, gradually, almost invisibly, they accepted it. They decided this is simply what 70 looks like. Now contrast that with the other man. Same age. He's in the gym 3 times a week, not performing for anyone, not trying to relive his 30s, just training, deliberately, consistently. And his body, his actual biological body, is doing something that most people assume is no longer possible at this stage of life. It's remodeling. Here's the foundational concept I want you to lock in, because everything else builds from this. Aging is not a one-way street into irreversible decline. Your body at 70 is still in a constant state of biological remodeling, breaking down tissue, rebuilding it, and adapting to whatever physical demands you place on it. That process does not stop at 70. It does not stop at 75. What changes is the direction. And resistance training is the most powerful tool available to determine which way that direction goes. The research on this is not ambiguous. Men over 70 who train consistently with weights show measurable scores across 4 critical physical markers: grip strength, balance, bone density, and systemic inflammation, in ranges typically associated with men a full decade younger. Not slightly better, a decade younger. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because I'd be willing to bet most of you have never heard that from a doctor. And that's not a coincidence. So the question worth asking is this: if the body is still remodeling at 70, what exactly is it remodeling into when you lift? Because the answer goes much deeper than muscle. It goes organ by organ, system by system. And that's exactly where we're going next. Let's talk about what actually happens inside the body of a man over 70 who lifts. And I mean specifically, mechanically, biologically, what lifting correctly does to you at this stage of life. Because most men who start training after 70 make the same critical mistakes immediately. They train like they're 45. They chase numbers they moved 2 decades ago. They skip the foundation entirely, jumping straight to the weights before their joints, their stability, and their movement patterns are genuinely ready for that load. That is not discipline. That is a fast track to injury. And an injury at 70 is not a setback. It is where progress ends. So let me teach you what correct training actually produces. Let's start with muscle, specifically fast-twitch muscle fibers. These are the fibers responsible for power, speed, and critically, your ability to catch yourself before a fall. They are the first fibers to deteriorate without training stimulus, and they respond directly and measurably to resistance work. Think of them like a generator. The more consistently you run it, the cleaner and more efficiently it operates. Shut it down for years, and restarting it costs you significantly. But here is the crucial point. It can be restarted. That is not motivation. That is physiology. Now let's talk about bone. Mechanical loading, the kind that comes from lifting weights, directly signals osteoblast activity. That is your body's mechanism for building new bone tissue. This is not theoretical. This is one of the few non-pharmaceutical interventions with documented bone density maintenance in men over 70. You are not just maintaining what you have. Under the right training stimulus, you are actively building. Now here is where it becomes genuinely surprising, and this is the part I want you to pay close attention to. A meta-analysis tracking resistance training outcomes in older adult men found that consistent lifters showed measurable increases in BDNF, that is the protein directly linked to memory retention, cognitive sharpness, and executive function. Men who lift consistently after 70 are not just physically different from their sedentary peers, they are neurologically different. Studies document improvement in cognitive markers ranging from 20 to 35% across longitudinal data sets. Even the conservative end of that range is significant. So when someone asks me whether lifting can actually protect the brain, and I get asked this regularly, the honest, research-backed answer is yes, measurably, consistently, yes. Now let me give you the full picture side by side because this comparison is important. Men who lift consistently after 70 versus men who do not are not just physically different, they are hormonally different, they are cardiovascularly different, their inflammatory profiles look different, their neurological function tests differently. These are not minor variations, these are structural differences in how the body is aging. And the question that naturally follows is this: what does all of that actually look like in the context of a real man's daily life? Because physiology on paper is one thing, what it translates to in practice is something else entirely. And that translation is where the real argument lives. At 74, he carries his own groceries, both bags, up a flight of stairs, no hesitation, no calculation, no planning around it. He doesn't grip the handrail coming down. His handshake is firm, not performed, just natural. He sits down and stands up from a chair without bracing against the armrest. He sleeps through the night because his body is genuinely physically tired, not just exhausted from the passive effort of existing. That is not a story about an exceptional man. That is what consistent, intelligent training does to an ordinary one. Now contrast that with the man the same age who was told to take it easy at 68, who slowed down, substituted the gym for light walks, and called it sufficient. By 73, he has a specialist he visits every 90 days. By 75, there is a walker in the hallway he did not plan for. Same starting point, completely different destination. This is what biological remodeling looks like when it goes in the right direction. Independence, physical presence, the capacity to show up fully in your own life. And if you're thinking right now, my situation is different, I have joint issues, I have limitations, I need you to hear this clearly. For most men, that is not a reason to avoid lifting. That is precisely the reason to start. The men who lift consistently after 70 don't just look different, they occupy space differently. There's a quality to how they move that comes from a body that is genuinely under control, not managed, not compensated for, controlled. But here's what most fitness content will not tell you directly. There is a version of this story that goes wrong. And it goes wrong because men are not disciplined or lazy. It goes wrong because they follow protocols built for a body 20 years younger. So before we talk about what the right approach looks like, I need to give you a warning. One most men ignore entirely. Drop a comment right now. What is harder for you at this stage? Starting consistently or staying consistent once you've begun? I want to know where you actually are.
Here is the truth that mainstream fitness content consistently avoids. When a man over 70 commits to lifting, the first thing that changes is not his muscle. It is not his bone density. It is not even his energy levels. The first thing that changes, and the thing that changes most profoundly, is his identity. Most men arrive at 70 having spent decades defined by external structures, a career, a role in the family, a position in a social hierarchy, and one by one, those structures shift. They get handed off. They fade. The gym does not do that. The bar does not negotiate based on your former title, your age, or your history. It either moves or it does not. And that binary reality, that complete absence of compromise, is something deeply significant for a man at this stage of life. The men who lift consistently after 70 are not doing it primarily to look better. What they have figured out, often without being able to articulate it directly, is that physical discipline at this stage is one of the last remaining acts of genuine self-determination. That is not vanity. That is sovereignty. Now, the warning, and I need you to take this seriously. Men who stop lifting after years of consistent training lose their adaptations significantly faster than men who never started. The body remembers what it built, and the withdrawal from that established baseline is steep. Muscle loss accelerates, bone density drops, inflammatory markers climb, cognitive sharpness softens. Start this week, not next month, not when the conditions feel right. This week. 3 days, compound movements, controlled tempo, consistent frequency. If you're not sure where to begin, subscribe to this channel right now, because everything I publish is built specifically for men at this stage. No generic advice, no programs designed for 30-year-olds, no fluff. Just what the research shows and what actually produces results after 70. Leave a comment below and tell me one thing. What is the single biggest barrier standing between you and consistent training right now? I read every comment, and I respond to the ones that show me you are serious about this. Share this with one man in your life who needs to hear it. One man who has been told to slow down, to be careful, to accept the decline. Because that advice is costing him years of physical independence he doesn't have to lose. The iron does not care how old you are. It only asks one question: did you show up?